Brazil against Colombia finished 1-1 there in Group D. Shout out to Costa Rica as well. They won 2-1 over Paraguay. So the Ticos finishing off their Copa America participation with a good note. But the story in this one was really a good game, but a very physical game as well. Rafinha with a goal in the 12th minute from the set piece. Munoz then scoring just before halftime to make it 1-1 for Colombia. The result leaves Colombia as your group winner. Brazil finishing second, meaning Brazil will get Uruguay in the Copa America quarterfinals. Joining us now, our good friend and colleague, the aforementioned Alejandro Moreno. Ale, I feel like we've seen some good games. We've seen some physical games here in Copa America. For this one for me felt like the best game. What did you think of it?
Well, at the very least, you have to say that it was the best environment. And that's going back to the Argentina-Chile game as well. That was very emotional in the stands today. Let me tell you, it's all of Barranquilla following this team. It's all of Bogotá following Colombia. They create the environment in this stadium that you could just sense it. You could feel it. And it's rare to see a team that outdraws Brazil. Usually Brazil will bring the people out, and not when Colombia is playing, and not when Colombia is playing in this tournament. It really felt again like we were in Barranquilla, like we were in Bogotá. Like you just felt that vibe, and you just felt that energy. Colombia were all over Brazil. I must say, I come out of this game far more encouraged about Colombia and the possibilities of them winning this competition than I do Brazil. But having said all that, I would also have to ask a question, because maybe I'm the only one who feels this way. And it's a question about one specific play in the first half. How is that not a penalty on Munoz as he takes down Vini Jr.? Look, I can understand that perhaps the referee doesn't see it. Shout out to the referee from Venezuela, by the way, who wasn't great today. Let's just say that my national team has been better than what the referee was today. I can understand that perhaps he misses the call. But how does VAR look at that play and not at the very least have the referee go take a look at it himself? I mean, am I wrong? Did I see something different? Was there a touch on the ball that I didn't see? Was there a part of the play that I didn't see? It seemed like a 100% a penalty and was not given. And while on the whole I would say that Colombia was better than Brazil, if that had been given as a penalty and Brazil scores that goal, they go up 2-0 late in the first half. Instead, it ended up being 1-1 going into halftime, and then the second half just kind of lost its shape in terms of the quality of play. It was more about the physicality. The game didn't quite have the rhythm that it had initially, and therefore I think it lost quality, and the game suffered towards the end, and it felt like, you know what, both of them will take the draw and we'll figure out what we do in the next round.
You agree with what Ale says? Brazil hard done on that no call?
Maybe. I saw a slight touch, but even with the touch, you can still argue that's a penalty kick. I mean, it's reckless going down like that.
There's contact and a touch on the ball if there's touch.
So now you're trying to determine whether it's a touch or not, and it's subjective. And we go back to what we saw, Uruguay versus the United States. If it's called one thing on the field, it's got to be clear and obvious to reverse it. And we saw that again. There's a goal scored in the first half, Colombian header off a free kick, and it's very dicey. But the call was offside on the field, so it makes it very difficult to go back. But hard done, should they feel hard done? Absolutely. Absolutely.
You agree, Kasey?
Yeah, I mean, I was all expecting to see, you know, in the replay that there was a clear touch from the defender. And it wasn't very obvious. In fact, it wasn't obvious. And so when I was expecting there to be a penalty. And then when it wasn't, you're thinking, oh, maybe they're seeing something I'm not seeing. Maybe there's an angle that VAR is seeing that they're not showing that shows a clear touch from the defender. That's the only thing I can think of.
I do see a touch, but even the touch doesn't excuse. The touch doesn't excuse.
You're the only one, Herc. There was no touch.
Well, hold on. I'm not the only one, Ali, because the call at the end of the day wasn't a penalty kick.
Well, no, but yeah, well, you and VAR, so you're in the same category as this VAR and the referee. That should tell you everything that you need to know. I know. And that should tell you all you need to know. There was no touch by the defender. The defender does not get a touch on the ball.
What about Ale's greater point about Colombia?
Well, Colombia were all over Brazil. And in the 67th minute, you had the Colombian fans, who I agree with Ali, are the fiesta of this tournament, chanting ole, ole, ole on Brazil. And quite frankly, I agree with this tells us that Colombia is a contender in this tournament. But I also learned something with Brazil here. They weren't too dangerous, but they created some opportunities early on. They were dangerous when they needed to be. And I thought defensively, at least for the most part, until the end, where I thought Colombia really took over, they showed some good things. And listen, this is because of what we saw versus Costa Rica, what we saw before versus the United States, what we saw at moments versus Mexico, what we've been seeing in World Cup qualifying. But they were a little better today. But Colombia's a very good team.
Which I'm not a big fan of, and we joke about it all the time, like the expected goals. But
correct.
Brazil was what? 0.15 expected goals?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they score a free kick from distance, which is going to,
that's
score.
U.S. territory right there.
Yeah,
that's US
exactly.
Territory,
Exactly.
0.15 expected goals.
Yeah, but you don't expect that from a Brazil. So, and I think that's kind of...
Well, those Brazilian days are done.
Well,
They're over.
But that's what we've seen with this Brazilian side. We're waiting for the Brazil with the attack to come flying at teams, and we haven't seen it against decent teams.
And when those Olays were raining down, it was still 1-1 at that point, correct? And what's interesting is at that point, Colombia has the result they need, and they were playing like the team that needed a
you know
goal.
What this was
Brazil,
like?
you would think, would want to get that win because they needed the win to avoid Uruguay. The tie was enough for Colombia to do so.
And it's surprising because Colombia goes in with their starters. They don't want to risk going in second place. And in this game, going in with their starters, Jefferson Lerma actually picks up a card, which costs them the next game. So they knew exactly what they were going for, what they were playing for. And it looked like Brazil at one point said, okay, we're not going to get there. Let's start making some changes. They made their changes. But this felt eerily similar. Not as devastating in terms of possession or in terms of overall quality of how the U.S. men's national team let the game against Colombia get away from themselves. Colombia just couldn't finish, but they had those opportunities late. There was back-to-back opportunities where, Allison will give up the ball, and then Luis Diaz has an opportunity, and then actually the goal comes off of that. And then late in the game, more opportunities where they're really applying that pressure, and you thought if Colombia's a bit sharper, this could end up a 3-1 scoreline easily.
Ale, we've kind of highlighted how good Colombia looked here. How much should we be focusing maybe on Brazil's deficiencies instead, or as well?
Well, before I go on to Brazil, the chance by Rafa Santos Borré at the end of the match.
Correct.
It's a tap-in, and it's one that he should be putting in, and it should be game over Colombia. So that allows me to transition into Brazil and just let you know, man, as encouraged as we might have been after the game against Paraguay, now you look at Brazil and you go, no, no, sir, no, thank you. Brazil, honestly, I looked at a team today that seemed to have two lines. You had the back line, and then you had Rodrigo and Vini Jr. hoping to do something in the attack. In between, it's a whole lot of nothing. Lucas Paquetá, no thank you. Nope. Doesn't participate in the game, doesn't help you defensively, doesn't help you offensively, can't complete passes through the middle. Bruno Guimaraes, who I think is a really good player, but spend most of the time kicking people around. Joao Gomez, same thing, he is kicking people around. So you're not seeing playmakers in the midfield from Brazil. You're not seeing connection going forward from Brazil. You're seeing two guys in Bruno Guimaraes and Gomez who are just breaking up play, and Lucas Paquetá, who's supposed to be the connection, who, well, was taken off because he wasn't very good at all. And by me saying he wasn't very good at all, I really mean he was terrible. Now let me get to Vinicius Jr. Look, dominant against Paraguay. Took over the game. Said, give me the ball. I'm going after players. I'm going in 1v1 situations. And yet in that game, even as we were seeing the best of Vini Jr., we also saw the worst of Vini Jr. He found himself...
I think we've lost comms there, obviously, with Ale for just a second. I think his internet is
to
cutting
go
out.
into
We'll go back to him in a
to
second.
what Ale was trying to say about Vini Jr., Davison Sanchez pocketed him. He was in his pocket all game. And, Vini Jr. is a player that if you allow him to have time and space, he will exploit you with his speed. He couldn't today with Davison Sanchez, who was equally as fast. And when you're equally as fast, well, that presents a problem for Vini Jr., who's not really seen this much of late in this season with Madrid or Brazil, but he definitely was frustrated tonight.
And that's Brazil's best player. They've won 1 of 3 games in this tournament, Kasey. You see a turnaround as we head to the knockout rounds for this
I think we
Brazilian
all
team?
were hoping, I mean, just from a neutral standpoint with the Paraguay game, but I think what we've seen was that Paraguay losing to Costa Rica, we're seeing that it was almost like the hope that the U.S. got against Bolivia with the 2-0 win. That's like, oh, here we go. But you just happened to play the weakest team in your group, and it kind of was kind of a false security.
Yeah, I don't know when's the last time we've seen a Brazilian team that lacks punch.
Yes,
they have Rodrigo, they have Vini Jr., you know, they've got Savinho,
Rafinha hits the free kick
Rafinha,
today,
yes,
yeah.
but it's a team that lacks punch. If you look at this team, regardless of how many caps they have, the Brazilian player with the most goals on here is Marquinhos. And after that, it's Lucas Paqueta. And then you would get into Vini Jr. territory. He's coming off a double. You know, it really is that bad when it comes to them in the final third. And you wouldn't have guessed it by the type of quality and the names that they have on the roster.
And what was one of those doubles? It wasn't dribbling 6 guys and smashing the ball in the top corner. It was following up and getting a ball rebounded off you and bundled into the net. So, yes, we haven't seen an explosive attack that you expect because you've seen it for generations with Brazil and it just hasn't emerged yet.
I believe we've got Ale Moreno back with us. Ale, I'm glad we got you back. Go ahead, finish your thought on Brazil and maybe if you see anything to build on through the group phase, something that might lead us to believe there could be a knockout round turnaround for this Brazil.
Well, if you can remind me as to where
Vini Jr.
I left
You were in the middle of talking to Vini Jr.
I can tell you, I felt like I was flowing. I felt like I was giving my best analysis, and then
It's like when somebody hangs up on you and you're still talking. We all been there.
Yeah, oh yeah, I know. Look, with Vini Jr., I think we saw glimpses of the best of Vini Jr. against Paraguay, and then we saw the worst of Vini Jr. also against Paraguay. In a game that was fully under control, Vini Jr. gets himself booked for no reason, just by running his mouth. And so what happens today, early in the match, he gets himself in trouble. And so now Vini Jr., because he got a second yellow today, he won't be available for Brazil. As they play against Uruguay, there will be no Vini Jr. And so how does that limit Brazil? Well, it limits Brazil quite a bit. But it's unnecessary. And that I think it's my point. My overall point about Vini Jr. is that when he focuses on just being dominant in the way that he was at times against Paraguay, he is among the best in the world, if not the best in the world, certainly over the last couple of months. But when he's just talking and talking and talking to that person, talking to this person, talking to that guy, and talking to the referee and the assistant referee and the fourth official, I think he loses focus. He loses control. He loses that, what he may think is an edge, he's losing that edge because he's now concentrating on everything else other than dribbling somebody and taking people on. And, by the way, mind you, now he's fully affected his team because their best player will not be available against Uruguay.
And you look at that 11, Herc, it's hard to imagine where it's going to come from if it's not Vinicius Jr.
Yeah, but even with Vini Jr., while I agree he's their most dangerous player, he's not been that player for Brazil in his time with Brazil, and he's very predictable. It's very much Vini Jr. gets the ball, and he's trying to push it at pace with somebody. You know, there's no combination play. There's no player in that midfield, that special player that could unlock or exploit how explosive he is on one wing or Rafinha on the other. It's very predictable. So why it is a massive loss for Brazil, because he's coming off against Paraguay 2 goals, and you will take certainly a hopeful play from Vini Jr. than not having Vini Jr. on the field. He wasn't exactly killing it for Brazil when he was playing for him.
Are you saying that he kind of benefits from a Tony Cruz or a Jude Bellingham or a Luka Modric?
Valverde.
Or Valverde, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think that's, I don't know if he feels that there's no other option, but that he needs to beat 6 guys to make something happen. But to your point, when you have someone like the physical presence of a Davinson Sanchez, and you can't just drop a shoulder and run by him, it seemed very predictable and very one-dimensional.
Ale, are Brazil underdogs against Uruguay?
Yes, they are. Absolutely they are. I don't think Brazil, at their best, whatever their best has been in this tournament, has matched Uruguay's best. And so I think when you have best against best with these teams, I believe that Uruguay should be the favorites. And now it's a big decision for Dorival Jr. as to what he does with the rotation of this team, because obviously Vini Jr. leaves a big hole. And what do? I would argue Rodrigo would go into the left-hand side, because we're focusing on Vini Jr., but Rodrigo has been terrible. Rodrigo has been non-existent. And so, and I would say, if you have paid attention to Rodrigo at Real Madrid, the times that Vini Jr. has been injured and Rodrigo has actually shifted to the left-hand side, he has actually become quite productive and quite dangerous. Maybe that's where he feels most comfortable. And then the question becomes, who do you play down the middle? I don't know that Dorival Jr. is going to do it at this stage of the competition, but I'm putting Endrick out there. Because at the very least with Endrick, you're going to get change of pace. You're going to get speed. And speed threatens a back line. Speed stretches a back line and pushes a back line to areas in which now it creates space underneath, to where perhaps Rodrigo can find those spaces and can operate underneath Endrick with some freedom. That's what I would do if I were Dorival Jr. I don't think he's going to do that, because it takes some guts to put the young guy out there. But my role for Endrick is not that he's going to decide the game with a big goal. I'm just saying he's a runner. And this team needs change of pace. This team needs overall team speed. And you get that from Endrick. He stretches the back line, allows Rodrigo to work underneath coming from the left-hand side. I think they may just become more effective that way in the attack.